So I'm Professor Anna Rhodes. I am the Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Sociology Department. I teach housing in schools, the social locations of inequality, and I teach the sociological imagination. And I study residential decision making. So I'm interested in how families decide where to live and how that decision intersects with other kinds of factors, which has lots of implications for the resources people have access to, the schools that they attend, and really can shape our life chances and outcomes in a big way.
My name is Ruth Lopez Turley, and I'm a professor of sociology, and I specialize in the sociology of education. I am the director of the Kinder Institute for Urban Research.
I'm Jeremy Fiel, Director of Graduate Studies in our program. I'm an associate professor now, so I teach Introduction to Sociology, Inequality, Mobility in Schools, so it's about sociology of education. I teach social stratification. That's because most of my research is about inequality and educational systems.
My name is Jennifer Bratter. I am a professor of sociology and the chair of the department. I study race and ethnicity, family, and demography. I've taught a course called Race, Gender, and Class on Film, Race, Population, Society, Sociology of the Family, and I've also taught population or demography.
My name is Shawnee Evans. I teach Intro to Sociology. I teach intersectionality of race, space, and place. I study cities and neighborhood change. I study racism and class inequality and education.
I'm Todd Ferguson, and I am an assistant teaching professor of sociology. And I also am the director of social sciences quantitative methods program. For undergraduates, I get to teach the quantitative analysis course, which is social statistics. Next spring of 2026, I'll be teaching an applied statistics for social research course.
Jim Elliott, professor and department chair of sociology for the moment, and also co-director of the Center for Coastal Futures and Adaptive Resilience. I tend to teach and study on environmental inequalities and urban development. I've taught urban sociology here, sociology of disaster. I teach the graduate course in research design.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Horch Freeman. I'm an associate professor of sociology, and I also have a joint appointment in the Center for African and African American Studies. I teach courses in race, racism, gender, Latin America, Afro-Latin America. I taught racial and ethnic relations and also race and family. I taught a course, Journey Towards Justice, which was the first course that I taught.
My name is Elaine Howard Eklund, and I am a professor of sociology. I've taught classes on sociology of religion, classical sociological theory, religion, science, and medicine. I've also taught over the years courses in sociology of immigration.
I am Brielle Bryan. I'm an assistant professor of sociology. I teach primarily quantitative methods classes for the grad students, but I do have undergrads join, and I teach social inequality.
8 years, 17 years.
10 years.
This is actually my 15th year.
19 years.
I came to Rice in 2021.
This is my 4th year at Rice.
Almost 7 years now.
I started at Rice in August 2024.
Started in the fall of 2023, and I love it here.
I am interested in looking at how we use religion in our lives and the reasons that people are religious or not religious, so those kinds of issues. I also have become a specialist in how people understand the relationship between religion and science. I've also studied racial injustice in religious communities.
I study religious congregations and religious leaders within those congregations.
I specialize in the sociology of education. We focus on doing research in partnership with community organizations. In the case of education research, we work directly with school districts in our area.
I focus a lot on how race operates to shape who we select in terms of our spouses and how we identify. Most of the variation in that focuses on patterns of interracial marriage and multiracial identities, seeing my experience as a facet of sort of a larger way in which race happens.
My research has focused on segregation and inequality and the way that's related to our educational systems.
Urban change, natural hazards, environmental hazards, industrial hazards, how communities are facing those issues and challenges, and how we can help empower them to make positive changes in their own lives.
One area that I study is neighborhood change and gentrification and racism in urban neighborhoods. I became interested in that topic by living in cities and observing cities change over time.
So my work deals with racism, anti-Blackness, white supremacy, and I do this both in Latin America and the United States.
My research is primarily focused around consequences of criminal justice system contact in the United States, primarily at the consequences of your own contact with the criminal justice system for subsequent housing and economic well-being, but I also look at what it means to have a family member who's been incarcerated. So I have work looking at the racial wealth gap. I didn't even plan to major in sociology as an undergrad, but I happened to take Introduction to Sociology, sociological imagination. That way of thinking really clicked for me. I got a master's in public policy and was working in the policy world. And while in that world, it became clear to me how much I thought a sociological lens was really important for that and was often missing.
Actually, I worked in education policy research, which I loved, but I also found it somewhat constraining in that I could only research things that were being funded by foundations in a particular year. I wanted to be able to do a variety of research that was more broadly focused, and so I went to do a PhD in sociology.
I was actually a biochem major as an undergrad, and after that I was a high school teacher. I wanted to understand how our educational system basically fits into processes related to segregation and inequality.
So I originally didn't know that sociology of religion was a field. I took one sociology course in undergrad, loved it, but I didn't major in it. And it was only when I was in divinity school and I kept asking questions that were sociological. And so I started reading in sociology of religion, and it was like I came home. So I found a PhD program that specialized in sociology of religion, and it fit me really well.
I grew up very poor, but then when I discovered that people actually studied poverty in a systematic way in order to help students and to help people thrive, I was hooked. I discovered the power of research and how research can actually be used to make changes at a systematic level. I thought, this is fantastic, I need to get involved.
Housing in schools, because it is close to my research area, so it's always really fun to teach a class and get to talk with Rice students about the topics that I'm passionate about.
Sociology of education, and it seems like every semester that I teach it, there's always something big going on, either at the federal level or at the state level in education, so it makes it fun to follow the current events in the class.
Journey Towards Justice, and I taught this course in the spring. Students during spring break come with me to Alabama, where we visit places like Selma, Birmingham, and Montgomery, which were all key sites of the civil rights movement. And so the vision of the course was to give students a type of tactile, sensory-like, immersive experience.
Social Science 302, which is the quantitative analysis course, or social statistics as most people call it. I love guiding students in the process of how do you analyze big amounts of data, how do you interpret things socially. And I also like helping students who might have a little math anxiety coming into social statistics and helping them see that it's more of a people course, it's more of a social science course than it is a math course.
So it's sociology of religion, science, and medicine. Sometimes people think of religion and science as being in conflict with one another, and it's been a chance to help students figure out the conditions under which religious and scientific communities can support one another around issues like mental health, thinking about aging and death and dying.
It allows us to examine or understand what is most natural to us, and that is how we connect with each other. Sociology is essentially a science of how people function within groups, how those groups are created, how they're maintained, how they change.
It is a place where people can ask all kinds of different questions, but we all do it with a similar lens.
It really challenges your own stereotypes as a researcher.
In order to have a good and just society, it's really important to understand how those processes work and like how people create and respond to inequality and to social boundaries.
Sociology allows us to kind of peek behind the curtains to identify some of the hidden structures of our society. So power, it helps us to understand culture, it helps us to see emotions in ways that might ordinarily get lost in our day-to-day interaction.
I think it makes us attentive to the things that are happening around us and aware of the ways in which our own experience is not the only experience. Every student should take a sociology class purely to sort of expand their horizons and ways of thinking about the world around them.
You get the best research skills within the sociology discipline. You can learn how to interview, you can learn how to take surveys, you can learn how to do statistics, you can learn how to use data visualization.
If you're curious about how social life works, if you're curious about things like religion or race or gender or social class, study sociology. I think it's a great foundation for whatever you want to do next, because we all have to know how society works in order to do our jobs.
Right now, there are huge changes taking place at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. We have to have a really clear understanding of how societal factors matter and how those things can be changed in order to improve individual lives, improve opportunities, and so forth.
Human decisions have created the structures that we have. Humans can also choose to undo these things or to change these institutions.
I think one misconception about sociology classes is that they're always
Easy.
Our classes are demanding in a different kind of way. There's always a depth of reading and writing and other kinds of things that you're asked to do in your classes that make them, I think, a little bit more challenging than students initially expect.
Studying people and understanding why people do what they do is so much more difficult. We are interconnected in all these complicated ways that makes us basically impossible to understand.
People who study sociology have to become sociologists.
There's so much more that you can do with a sociology degree. It's extremely useful for going into medicine, going into law, going into government, going into policymaking.
You know, people think that sociology is social work, so we're not individual counselors in the same way that social workers are. Of course, that's very, very important. We really get outside of systems.
I'm actually a different type of sociologist because I study emotions, and people often associate emotions with psychology, but there's a way that there's an entire structure that dictates which emotions are allowable, who's allowed to express what emotions, and those concerns are not individual questions, but rather broader structural and social questions.